And there he is, President Putin, up and away from Alaska, heading back across Russia. And as you say, Martha, I would think that he considers it a day well spent talking to Donald Trump. Certainly back on the international stage in Western terms. And he's been granted that, hasn't he? He's been granted that by President Trump, and now he's heading home. So we won't be able to judge precisely whether it was worth it or not until we know more.
A gift from President Trump, though, to have him on US soil. You know, the leverage that Europe and the US enjoyed over him was that he was isolated, and now Donald Trump has brought him back into the fold without really receiving anything in return, or at least that we know about yet. And I don't want to dwell on it too much, but the fact that he spoke first in that news conference, the fact that he appeared throughout the day, on an absolute level, if not above the US president, is quite stunning. And we were talking about Fox News earlier and how friendly they usually are to Donald Trump. Well, even their reporters saying that it is quite stunning that Vladimir Putin was allowed to talk first in those press conferences. I'm not sure whether it's actually the presidential plane that we can hear behind us.
It was quite interesting because there's a lot that happened today that suggested the Russians were actually calling the shots. If you think of that moment when they sat down in the chairs, alongside one another. Now, normally that is the moment where where Donald Trump opens up and invites questions and talks about things quite openly.
Yeah.
But that clearly was never going to happen. And didn't happen. And then you had the news conference where there were no questions at all. So it does look as if the Russians were probably calling the shots on how the meeting was conducted.
Yeah, I'm not 100% certain, Mark, but I think this is probably the only time in Donald Trump's second term that he has appeared publicly at an event like this and not taken a single question. You usually hear from him when he arrives, when he lands. You usually hear from him in that pool spray, the occasion where photographers are allowed to take pictures. You then always hear from him answering questions at a news conference. He answered questions on Air Force One on his way here, but he didn't answer a single question in Alaska, aside from obviously the interview he will do with Fox News, but not in an open forum, and that is remarkable. And I suspect that is because he agreed with Putin, with the Russians, that he wouldn't take questions in an open forum.
It was almost as if it was Putin hosting the meeting.
Putin,
but on American soil.
Yeah, Putin at the start of the news conference. He said, he said that he'd said to Donald Trump, "Good day, dear neighbour." He then gave a history lesson of the interactions between the US and Russia over the past year. That should be the job of the head of state who is hosting the summit. It shouldn't be the job of the visiting head of state, especially not one who is, wanted for alleged war crimes.
No, so Air Force One wending its way onto the runways at this Air Force base in Alaska that was chosen by the Americans for this meeting. And I'm hearing that in this interview with Sean Hannity, Fox, he apparently gave the meeting a 10. Is that right? Am I hearing right?
A 10 out of what? Out of 100? Or?
No. Well, I mean, this is the point. We don't know, actually. This is the problem. We don't actually know. And so it may be things emerge in the coming hours that shed a different light on all this.
And it has to be said, a lot of people, you know, I've been out and about talking to voters in Alaska about how they viewed this meeting. And a lot of people were saying they think it's good that Donald Trump is sitting down with Vladimir Putin, that by being face to face with him, it gives the best possible chance of success in terms of reaching lasting peace in Ukraine. You know, a lot of people here, you know, appreciate that Donald Trump does things differently than other leaders have in the past. And as you say, we'll hear in the fullness of time if, you know, there has been any meaningful progress made. We just haven't had any indication of any progress so far.
Just a few hours ago, you know, there was fly-pasts and handshakes and warm smiles, and it just seems to be ending in a deflating way for President Trump.
Yeah, I mean,
which is not often the case. He's normally pretty buoyant to the end, isn't he?
He is. I mean, the fact that he's giving himself 10, I presume, out of 10, suggests that he's at least trying to present the case that this has been a successful day. But, you know, we started out this morning, you know, wondering what would be the outcome at the end of the day. I think you asked John Bolton, Trump's former national security advisor.
But he said exactly this, actually.
He predicted that this would happen, that there would be no real change in the situation, and that Putin had the measure of Donald Trump, and that Donald Trump hadn't prepared properly for this meeting. And I was actually reading something from Michael McFaul, who was the US ambassador to Russia during the Barack Obama administration. And he said for most presidents, a summit like this is a means to an end. For Donald Trump, it's almost the end, you know,
an end in itself.
An end in itself. And that he'd not really put the building blocks in place for this to be a success. Rather, the spectacle, you know, the appearing with Vladimir Putin, the sitting down with him, I think he thought that might be enough to shift the dial on the conflict in Ukraine and change the course of history, change the course of Vladimir Putin's thinking. Putin arrived, you would imagine, studiously well prepared, with an incredibly well-drilled team of foreign policy veterans around him, and he seems to have come out the victor in this encounter.
Yeah. There's no great queue at the end of the runway before takeoff here. It's straight off. President Trump heading home just a few minutes after President Putin. President Putin going one way and Donald Trump going the other.
There's a park in the centre of Anchorage, and for the last couple of days there have been a few people sewing together a Ukrainian flag. It's huge, you know, almost the size of a football pitch, and it says, "We stand with Ukraine." And they said the aim of that was that as Vladimir Putin is taking off, as he's flying back to Moscow, that he will see that flag and hear their message. There is, you know, a huge amount of support for the Ukrainian cause, even here in the red state, the Republican state of Alaska.
So there we are. Air Force One with President Trump on board is heading back to Washington. He has left Alaska. They have used words after the meeting like constructive and productive and useful. But the word neither president used was the word that most Ukrainians wanted to hear, and that was the word ceasefire. And the search for a ceasefire, it seems, goes on. And I'll leave you with that from all of us here in Alaska. a very good night to you.